Frederik van den Bosch. I'm very pleased to have you here. We just come from an exciting session on sustainable energy enterprises. You are heading the EDFI Management Company, which is managing financial instruments such as Electrify. And I would be very interested to hear from you a bit more on the objectives, on the background of Electrify, and also why it is innovative compared to other financial instruments.
Okay, so there are actually two things that we started doing. The first is indeed the EDFI Management Company, which is for the first time that the 15 European DFIs, the members of the EDFI group, the private development banks in Europe, collaborate in a new entity that will actually manage funding in a high-risk, high-impact space. And we're in a lucky position to do this because the European Commission was very eager to collaborate with us for us to use their funding, which was classically grant funding, and to apply it in a commercial way. So that's on a product level why it is innovative in the sense that nobody is doing this now in this space, and this is in the energy space. There's lots of funding available, but typically grant funding, before commercial parties and development banks can come in, it is parties need track record, experience, size. So there are quite some hurdles that you have to sort of pass and outgrow before bankers can really look at your cases. And what we're doing is aiming for the space in between, where we have to look at the potential, the opportunities. Of course, we bear risks in mind as good bankers, but we have the luxury that we can look at the opportunities and finance parties that have potential. With our funding, we make it maybe easier for them from a financing point of view, but we demand a bit more from them on the impact side. Mm-hmm. This fund in specific, Electrify, is meant to support the creation of new or improved access for the 1.2 billion people, big numbers out there, of which half in Africa and another big group in India. So there's a big space there where just grant funding, especially grant funding through government parties and NGOs, will not be enough. We will need the private sector to support, to bring in their own funding. We will need the private sector to introduce their way of thinking and way of working, especially where business cases can be commercially deployed, which means end clients pay for their products. And that's where we see lots of opportunities.
Well, that sounds very promising and interesting. You mentioned the low electrification rate. We heard in the session before that it is not so much about a lack of funding, not so much a lack of financing, but rather a lack of bankable projects. So I'd like to hear a bit more about that, because there seems to be interest. So one thing is there is demand, but still how to match demand and the project pipeline, let's say. So could you elaborate a bit on that, please?
Okay. Sure. No, indeed. Very often heard is there's so much funding available. And there is maybe never enough, even if it's billions. At the same time, there is so much demand in the markets. But the big issue is indeed matching these two. Lots of the supply of funding does not match the demand of funding. And this has to do sometimes with just very legitimate reasons. And the bankers, and you can sort of imagine, especially the last few years, are being looked at in a lot more of a strict way. They have to look at their clients, the credit worthiness of their clients, track record of the clients, collateral in the financing structure. Local currency is a big issue, especially in the energy space, whereas most international funders cannot just easily supply local currency. These are a few of these examples, but there are more examples which are reasons for mismatch between supply of funding and demand of funding. That's what it comes down to. We are in the luxury position that through Electrify we have EU funding that is, from our point of view, grant funding that we receive, but it allows us to be flexible in how we apply this. For example, I can apply this in local currency. For many clients, it's wonderful if they can get nairas, kwachas, kwanzas, or shillings, but I will make our clients pay for it. So we're not going to be sort of the easy funder. We have to be realistic as well. But from the client point of view, it also makes sense that you build this into your price. We've done quite a bit of this at FMO in my previous position, so I know that this works and that this can be done, but it's just not being done very often. The funding from the EU allows us to do this because they're flexible in how we can apply this. And so that'll be our role is to be this sort of the broker between supply and demand. And along the way, we hope that our clients, our prospective clients, can build up that track record and they can show their business cases and they can maybe create the collateral and create the situation where bankers will hopefully call us or call them and say, like, we want to be involved as well. So the market development aspect is definitely in there, but what we want to use is the parties out there with all their plans and all their initiatives, because it's amazing how much is out there.
Well, thank you very much. Ending on that positive note, I think, but it is very fascinating and interesting. So, Frederik van den Bosch, thanks a lot for that interesting insights, and yeah, thank you.
Thank you. You're welcome.